Ha! We did it. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thanks for hanging out. What a great day. Just day. It's a snow day here. We have the snow, so the school's canceled. So yeah, the kids are upstairs hanging out and good times. Good times.
Yeah, is that a good time to get together and play D&D with your family?
You know, they might be. That might be a good idea. I know that that is a thing where what would you call it? Like a team meeting, family session,
Uh-huh.
where we come gather around the dining room table and crack out the D&D. Now, the picture in my head, uh, the dungeon master always sat with like it looked like a big menu
Screen.
in front of him. Yeah, and then they
Screen is
had
the technical word.
the screen, and
Yes.
that'd be my wife. My wife would
Oh
be the
yeah.
dungeon master in this house. Yeah,
Oh, that would be fun.
So,
yeah,
so
she's
do
the
your
one that
kids
comes
have
up
an
to me.
awareness of Dungeons and Dragons, Deshaun?
No, only from the cartoons and the movies.
It
Only
sounds
from the
like they would
cartoons and
know
the movies.
about spring a lot better than D&D
They
probably.
do yeah. The kids, uh, my kids have actually like presented at jugs and even in front of customers. Right,
Oh,
my
nice.
kids have done some yeah pretty good stuff. And my yeah, if they hear me talk about Java 8, they get a little bit fiery. They get a little wild. They're like, Dad, what? Are you using Java 8? No, no, no. This is for educational purposes. Just make sure they're not using Java 8. And that's the thing.
Did they use your prattle about never being hungry when people come to your house?
Yes, yes,
Good.
yes, they do,
I
and they
I'll
do
have to see
not
if my
avoid
kids have
acrobats.
adopted my prattly terms. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it comes, and it might not happen right away, and they might not do it in front of you, but they're doing
Uh, that's what I'm going to think. They do it when I'm not around them.
it. They're at school. Will you come over to my house to play? If you leave hungry, that's your fault because we got all the snacks.
That's right.
Yeah, Corby, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Very happy to be back here with you. We had a great success doing D&D sessions with the family here. I had to. I was into Dungeons and Dragons back in the '80s, and then I was very surprised that in this decade it was still a thing, and kind of re uh, kind of came back with the kids and stuff. And so I went in and had to learn, okay, well, how does it work now and stuff. And I watched the some of the Critical Role videos where they run those live play sessions, kind of get a feel for how they do, the collaborative storytelling. I was like, okay, cool. Went back and created a little session. We had a great time as a family.
I have a friend who does that online. I think it's twice a week, but I had a conflict. But they hop on Twitch and they have they do it live. They play their game, they do it live, and it's just they're they're not comedians. Like they're fun, uh, but every time I watch, it felt like it was like just a workshop. It was just a place where they could go and workshop their material because they're cracking
Yeah.
jokes, they're being silly, and it was like a kind of like a comedy troupe. Like hey, here's the squad, but it was all around D&D, and it was hilarious. I need to go find that again. It's good stuff. So should we jump into it?
Yeah, I think so.
Where
What
did
do you
we?
think?
What's happened since last episode? Maybe
So
we
actually,
can.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
So just last week when we jumped on, we said, "Hey, we're going to do role playing session," uh, and what we did was we kind of jumped into the Spring technology for being able to provide these little AI tools that could be used by our campaign coordinator. And we got through last week's session the process of creating a dice rolling tool,
That's
and
right.
then a few hours later, the Spring team released a update to this model context protocol support for Spring AI that greatly simplified the API. Just made it so easy to say, hey, if I got pre-existing enterprise assets, if I got a pre-existing software or whatever, you just plug it in and go, and you start immediately working with it and getting results instead of spending 45 minutes writing JSON like we did last week here.
Yeah. Now I saw you going through this yesterday, right? And it looked like what I would what I would expect to be happening.
Yes, it felt much more as we get closer to a 1.0 release. It felt more like a
more springy
type of release.
And to recap, right? Like the whole exercise here is this is why we're talking about D&D is like how could we make playing D&D with generative AI as your dungeon master running the game better? And there's this thing called the Model Context Protocol, MCP, that allows you to, there's different terminology, as I probably will for the rest of the life of MCP make fun of it for. There's different terminology, but you basically can create these plugins that, among other things, the Claude
you mean
desktop,
servers?
Yeah, that's right. The Claude desktop client can run. And so there's a potential here of like adding in all these little things that would help, as I like to think of it, the chat DM be better. And we've been enumerating them. And what you're alluding to, so there's Python ways of doing it and Node and something. But the Spring Framework team has written what would you even call it? I don't know. They've added MCP support to what they have. And what they did and what you showed me yesterday is more or less all you have to do is create like a method in a Java file somewhere, and all of a sudden you've created a plugin, a server that you can extend the functionality of what Claude does, which I think like that right there, like you open up the whole possibility of like doing agentic workflows around D&D stuff in generative AI, which is
so since we can go so much faster now, I figure maybe we can jump through building tools and actually get into running a live campaign together. And maybe we can iterate over that experience today. That'd be okay. So first off, since it's so much faster, I thought I'd real quick go ahead and kind of recreate what we spent 45 minutes on last week and recreate our dice rolling piece with the new API, just to show how fast that is, and then we can start plugging in some new tools. If
that sounds great. I like that idea.
Okay, fantastic.
The code.
So I'm going to go ahead and, as Coté says, start from a blank terminal screen here. I'm going to bring up a brand new Java product, and we're going to call this Dice MCP. So what we're saying here is we're creating a model context protocol server, a natural language interface to our function. And then we are going to, and we're going to create it as a standalone component because it's kind of like refactoring, services in your Spring app. If you create a bunch of different standalone components that have context and boundaries, then you can mix and match them and compose them the way you want to create your own server here. So I'll go ahead and create a brand new Java Maven Act. I will use Java 21, Deshaun here, and go ahead and stand this up. This will be a regular old Spring app here. So let me pull this one up. And then we will jump on into our pom.xml. And we'll go ahead and pull this out. We have the Java version 21, looks good. Let's go ahead and get our dependency management out. So what we're going to do now is pull in this Spring AI BOM. Last week you saw a bunch of different dependencies, but now they've simplified it. All we have to do is just simply pull in the Spring AI BOM to do our work.
Would you mind bumping up your font?
Oh, thank you so much for reminding me. I always forget to do that because I'm just sitting here staring at my own screen. So we're going to go zoom. We're going to go zoom. and we will bump it up to let's try see if we can get away with that here. All right,
That's much better.
Okay. All right, fantastic. So sorry if you couldn't see what all I did was I just pulled up a regular Spring Boot pom.xml. I added the dependency management, which allows me to pull in the Spring AI BOM. And then I'm going to grab a dependency, which is going to be this new starter that they've built. So this is going to be the Spring AI MCP server Spring Boot starter, and that's going to pull in all the dependencies that we need. So that makes things a lot simpler. And then we'll go ahead and make sure that we're pointing to the correct snapshot repos for the stuff that we need. And then we'll jump into our application properties. And we will go ahead and define the properties that are needed for our DICE MCP server. So that's going to basically set up and say, hey, this MCP server is going to publish on a port to make itself available to the MCP client. It's going to own the web communication, so we're not going to let Spring MVC publish its own controllers here. And we're going to turn off logging so that we don't stream stuff to system out and confuse the client here. And then we can go ahead and just create our component. So this would be the point where I would either plug into existing software, or in this case, we're going to author brand new software in order to create a natural language interface for our AI component here. So I'm going to create a DICE service. Of course, this will be a Spring service. And we're going to simply write a function to do dice rolls. And I actually don't have it in front of me here. So we'll go ahead and just do just like last week. And we'll ask it to create a new function for us. Write a Java function that accepts dice notation and returns the sum of the dice rolls. And AI tends to be pretty fast at cranking this out here. All right, so it's going to handle the function that'll handle dice notation, and it's a little bit hit and miss on this. Sometimes it'll do the additive modifiers, and so it says, yeah, do you want me to support additional features like adding the 2d6 plus 3 for adding modifiers?
That's nice.
Yes, please support adding modifiers. That will be important for our D&D campaign. All right. And it's going to handle addition and subtraction. That's good. So it's basically taking a regex parser. It's going to read our dice notation, and then it's going to spit out the sum of the dice rolls. So I'm just going to take that code and bring it into our dice service here.
You know, when you're generating code with this, does it ever ask you questions before it does it?
It did.
Well, in this case, I guess it asked us after. It's quite possible. Yeah, if I provide incomplete information, it may sometimes say, "Hey, I need some additional information before I proceed." Absolutely.
That would be great, because it would be like working with a senior developer who always tells you you're wrong before just
Fantastic. All right. So we'll pull in our imports here, and now we've got a working roll dice function. Just for readability, I'm going to remove these comments here. Okay, so then so now we have a function. How do we make this available to an MCP server so that we have a natural language interface to it? This is going to be so much simpler than last week, y'all. All I'm going to do is put an annotation on here called tool that says basically we are. Oh, I need to go ahead and pull in those imports from Maven here. So we set up the Maven imports, pull those in from my POM XML. There we go. And now find that tool annotation. Got it. All right. So the tool annotation said, and we're going to provide a natural language description to it. And the LLM is going to use this natural language description to decide, hey, when and how do I need to invoke this function in order to solve a user problem here? And so it's going to be roll dice according to the specified dice notation. return the result of the roles. There you go. All right, so now we have this tool. So all we have to do is just register this tool with our MCP server, and now it will be available to the MCP client. So to do that, I can just go here and create a bean as part of my config, or I can just stick it in my main. This is my MCP tool, and it is going to take the dice service, auto wire it in here, and it's going to invoke this list of tool callbacks. And so what this means is it's going to call this tool back call from function. It's going to scan the dice service for all the methods that are annotated with the tool annotation, and then add them to the bag of tricks that are available in the MCP server. So we have one method in there. We could put 100 methods. They'll all get registered in there, and that's it. We have now completed everything that we did last week in terms of the.
That was fast. We've only been streaming for 17 minutes, but I think you've only been coding for like 6 or 7.
Excellent. Okay, so we got things going a lot faster here. So why don't we go ahead and
do me a favor? Can we look at
please.
the tool callbacks?
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Look at that class.
Sure. Let me download the sources.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Okay, here we are. So it's scanning the methods in the sources, and it's going to use that to construct a list of tool callbacks here.
All right.
Looks good.
Yeah. Jump into the method tool callback provider.
You bet.
It's just a hook, right? It's just like, hey, here we go. Is functional.
So it's using reflection.
Yep.
It's going to look for that tool annotation to see if it's present on the method. It's going to make sure that it's not a function type that we're trying to prevent, and what's basically a plain old POJO method, as opposed to last week when we were working with function methods. And then it's going to create this array of tool callbacks that map the metadata, things like that description that we had in there, onto the list of tools.
So this is where they simplify things for us.
That's
like,
right.
Hey, we're going to do all these the exact same way. Make it so that I don't have to think about all that. That's nice.
It is good.
Cool. Thanks for going on that side mission.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much to Mark Pollock and Christian Zolotov and Thomas Vital and all the people who did just absolutely amazing work on here. And have just really created a nice spring experience for us, and let us focus less on the coding and wiring and more on the game playing. So I'm going to go ahead and compile this method here, and then I'm going to go ahead and select my MCP client. So like last week, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Claude as my MCP client, but you can use a whole host of MCP clients that are supported standards. You can use your IDE as an MCP client. It just doesn't make a great Dungeons and Dragons interface. You can use Spring AI allows you to code your own MCP client. So if you want to just create your own custom client or have one built into your existing applications, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and use Claude. So I will go ahead and pull up the MCP server configuration here for Claude Desktop. And I'm going to add the server that we created. So this is going to be our DICE MCP server. And we tell Claude in order to run it, we're going to run this java -jar command on the server that we built. And then we're going to give it a unique port to listen onto. And that should do it. So I'm going to go ahead and load up Claude now, my MCP client.
And so you can also kind of tell what's going on with MCP, that it like basically starts up some process is it is it doing it over just a web interface? I mean, an HTTP port.
HTTP interface. That's right. Which is why at the beginning we had to disable
turn off the logging and
screen
everything.
MVC stuff. Yeah, exactly. So it's streaming system out through the interface, and it also is able to respond to HTTP requests.
And does it is that like a long running process it has, or does it start it up each time?
Go to your terminal, and you've got Cloud started up. It shows you've got those three tools, three functions that are now set up. So now you can go to a terminal and you can do JPS, and we should be able to see if that jar file is running.
Oh yes, I see what you're saying. Gotcha. My bad. All right, let me pull this up. Okay, so if I pull this up here, it now says it's registered one MCP tool. The tool that's available is our Roll Dice tool from the Dice MCP server that we published in here. And as Deshaun says, I can do JPS. I can see in the background, it launched this Dice MCP server. So it's running in the background and it's ready to service requests from the client here. And
so thanks for that question, Coté, because you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over here to my MCP server that I built, and I'm going to just see if I can do it as a native image. Please hold.
Okay.
Right?
While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and test our
background.
server here. So I'm going to ask it to roll a D20, natural language question, of course. And it says, I'm going to roll a 20 signed up for you. And it figures out, hey, I can probably use this Dice MCP tool I've registered to be able to answer that question. So it asks me permission just in case I don't trust this server or might be doing something destructive. Do you have permissions for this chat to run this roll dice method? I say, yes, it's safe. So it's going to go ahead and do that. And I rolled a 15. So that's interesting. The first time it rolled D20, and it looks like our method did not accept that, and it should have accepted that, and it changed it to 1d20. And so I don't like that. So let's go ahead and update our dice roller function here. So make sure the function accepts a single dice roll. It accepts dice notation in the form D20, for example, which rolls a single die. So usually when it generates the code, it accepts that. But there we are. Thank you. I'll make the number of dice optional, defaulting to 1 if not specified. So that looks good. All right, and so we'll go ahead. Yep. Okay, so now we got a new version of our function here. Let's go ahead and go back to our Dice MCP server and update the function. There we go. And this does not need to be static. So let me go ahead and just get rid of that there. And then we'll rebuild our server with the new code. So this was a problem with the function we provided, not a problem with MCP itself here. We just needed to update the function and make it a little bit smarter. And so now we've gone and restarted Claude. It's redone the dice, and we'll try again. We'll say, hey, roll D20 for us here. And we're going to allow it to do that. And that works. So that I rolled a 2, unfortunately. So I'm not very good at this game. I can say, hey, roll 2d4 plus 2. And that should work just fine. All right, roll 2d4, add to the result. Excellent. Okay. All right, so cool. So that's one component we have. Now we want to do a lot more of this game. So let's start adding some more components to the mix here. So to move things along, I've gone ahead and pre-written a couple of components here. So one is I have this loot MCP component. So this is for creating a simple loot table for what we do. And I created this just using the same process we just saw in terms of creating the DICE MCP server. But all this does is invokes a function that says, hey, take the result of an 8-sided die roll, use that to select loot when the opportunity arrives in our adventure. I ended up creating a set of Tanzu's themed loot items, things like a signed copy of Spring Boot in Action by Craig Walls, a Raspberry Pi baked by Deshaun Carter, and so on here. So we've got that, and then I just put the little tool annotation on here. I also put there's an additional annotation that's provided, which is tool param. So in addition to annotating the method itself and providing a natural language description of the method, randomly generate treasure or loot to be discovered by a player, I also have the ability to provide a natural language description of the parameter, which provides even more context and makes the LLM even smarter about when and how to invoke the method. So we can go ahead and build our loot MCP server, and then we're going to add that to our Claude configuration as well. So I'll go back to where did our Claude configuration go? There we are. So we'll go ahead and add this. This will be our loot MCP server. We need to give it a different port to listen on, 8051 here, and format that. All right, now we'll go ahead and restart Claude.
So if I understand how things work, Deshaun, this is where your native compilation would be handy, because if we had 3,000 of these, the power of Java might overwhelm mere mortal machines.
Right. It might take a while to start up the tools. That's a good point, Coté. So now if I look in, it says I have two MCP tools available. I have loot table and roll dice. So I'll say, hey, find me some loot. See what it does with that here. All right, I hope you generate some random loot. So here's the important thing to watch. Is all I did was I said, find me some loot, and it figured out how to sequence these tools and put them together to get a result. So instead of diving into the loot table, it said, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll an 8-sided die. So I'm going to allow it to use the 8-sided die roll. And then based on that roll, with that roll, let me check the loot table. So can you use we'll allow it to use the loot table, and there you go. And so we found a golden rabbit statue that has the mysterious initials MQ emblazoned upon it. So this could have some historical significance here. So
I think with your excitement, it's worth pointing out here, and maybe I'm interrupting you doing it, but this is like pretty much, depending on what you think agentic AI is, this could be one full definition of what it is, which, as you pointed out, is relying on like whatever you want to call it. I'll just say AI, relying on an AI to figure out what you want and put together a plan for various. So that's the first thing. Figure out what you want, put together a plan, and then figure out what tools it has available to it, and string those tools together, coordinating, passing things between them, and then of course seeing the result, right? Calling those tools and passing along. And I think the only thing that's above that, which maybe you could do in a situation like this, is the dream scenario of an autonomous thing. But in this case, we want to play D&D. We don't just want to get a notification that it had a great session on its own. And so I don't know if, I was thinking so the autonomous part being that like it runs off and does stuff all on its own. And that might be interesting at some point to like when the human is sleeping in the real world, you could have it go off and see what the NPCs are up to and just kind of like play things, but whatever. So right there, you've got a definition of what, as of February 12th, 2025, agentic AI means.
There it is.
Excellent. So let me go ahead and just bring one more tool into the toolkit here. And this is what's going to allow us to actually run the campaign. So this is our campaign MCP. And what I've done is, so what one definition of agentic is, of course, being able to string together these tools, allowing it to create these meaningful compositions to meet the user needs. Another important thing is being able to train it on the best practices of knowledge experts, and our knowledge expert here is Coté. So what I've done is I've set this campaign tool up to incorporate some of Coté's best practices about prompting an LLM in order to run a D&D campaign. And I will be right back, but I thought, Coté, maybe you could talk real quick about your prompting strategy.
Sure. So essentially what you're doing with a prompt here to get it to become a dungeon master, and this is an older prompt, be fun to play around with a newer one. But first you're telling it what you want it to do, to be a dungeon master, right? And then the other thing that you don't have to do so much now, but I think also as we could get into with agentic AI, with what we're doing here would be interesting, is you can tell it references and resources to use, right? As you can see there. Now, what's good about the models that exist now is D&D stuff is all very well known. There's even some free to use kind of licensed version of them, I think, if I understand the way they're licensed. So you can just understand the rule books and a lot of things. And there's also a lot of commentary out there. So it's all pre-trained on how all this stuff would work, which is great. Sorry, my camera has been funky recently.
That's okay.
I'll have to figure out what's up with it. But and then the rest of the prompt is describing kind of the style that you want it to have. Like, do you want high fantasy or like more gritty sort of thing? But then it's also going over some important coaching things in case the AI can't figure this out. Like, one of the most important things is like you're going to have players, and you don't really want to say what they're doing. Like, you want to have them have their own agency in doing things, and going over that. And then I think further down, a lot of what's in this prompt is me using it over several months and figuring out things that it screws up, that it does wrong. And then another aspect of this is, it's kind of giving it some coaching about essentially, and this is one thing that hopefully the agentic stuff we're doing would take care of, is like, so if you think about it, if we open one AI chat session, it at one point will lose track of the memory because its context window will run out. Like, it can only hold so much memory at once. And then even worse, 3 days later, when we start a new chat session, you've got to completely reboot that memory. And so there's some instruction on like how to handle that and do things like that. But you can see that this prompt gets to be very long, right? And this prompt doesn't even say who the players are or what adventure you're going to be doing. This is all just mechanics of doing stuff. But, usually what you would do if you're doing this on your own is you would paste the prompt into the window and see how it responds. And then also you do end up having to coach it a lot. Like, it doesn't get things quite right. So I think what'll be interesting with an agentic approach is how you can break this prompt up, how you can change it and specialize it, right? How you won't even have to paste it in. But, there's a lot of stuff in the prompt. Promptings are still important. And there's one section here to pull something out that kind of is representative of this. Is I don't so much do this anymore, but like I think it's fun when there's like if you've ever done, I guess they've always done this in D&D adventures, but there'll be these little tables of like rumors and secrets that people tell you. And so you can kind of like instruct it to make these things up for you, which is interesting. But it's also the kind of thing that probably is better as one of these little like MCP servers or a plugin, right? Like, you could do a lot more with this kind of thing than having it in the prompt. And you could also tune it to be better. Now, the results you get with this are fun, as a last comment, right? Like, this may not be what you want if you're doing like insurance claims processing. But when you're playing something imaginative and creative like D&D, the fact that generative AI things hallucinate and make things up is fantastic. Like, that's what you actually want to happen here. And this is an instance where like coming up with these rumors and stuff is actually pretty great to see in effect. But if we were to add like one of these MCP modules, a tool in as I think you've expertly named it, Corby, in your bag of tricks. Like that's where you could have a lot more creativity and also align what these rumors are to the current adventure you're in, not just making something up.
Yeah, and it lets you fine tune the experience. So when I ran through yours prompt here, it was cool, but also I didn't like the experience necessarily because it gave me just a big laundry list of quests to do. It's like, thanks, Dad. I got a lot of work to do today,
Exactly.
in this session. So it would be cool if this was broken out as a component. I could go in and fine tune and coach the LLM to make it a little bit more fun, modify it for that experience, and then make that available as a tool. So I think that would be cool. So what I did with the campaign MCP server was I took a bit of Coté's DNA, injected it into the constant string here. So we have, I have basically two methods in the server. One is the start session. So it contains a lot of Coté's coaching in terms of how to interact with the player, writing style, do's and don'ts, good best practices that Coté's learned to coax a fun session with the LLM. And then separately, we have this concept of the campaign, right? So this is basically the script, the scenario, the characters, the goals that we're going to have in this particular session, and you can we want these session descriptions to be consistent across our play sessions. We want to be able to swap out the campaigns for different play sessions, right? So we have the ability to load the campaign, and if I was being a little more enterprisey, I would have this stored in a database. We'd load it from the database. We have the ability to select from a database. I just went and did a quickie hack. I took a campaign that Coté generated, and I just dumped it in as raw text into here. So it's kind of it's an adventure called Goblin Trouble in Finland. And I say at the beginning of the start session, I say, hey, before you begin, load the provided campaign. So if this works out, then it should get set up properly with the rules. It should load the session, and it should have things like dice rolling and loot table in its bag of tricks to be able to run a good play experience. So who wants to play some Dungeons and Dragons?
I do. Can I play?
Yes, absolutely. Although, I tell you what, probably the only thing better than playing D&D is hearing Coté's voice. So if he's willing to narrate the adventure, that would be
sure.
Absolutely astonishing.
And while we're waiting for that, I think there's a few things worth noticing here that you can extend into whatever agentic program you're doing. One is normally you would have to manually cut and paste this stuff into a chat window, right? Here's your instructions of how I want you to perform. Here's the adventure that you're doing. Here's the characters that I'm doing. But here, what you can start doing is having there must be some word for this in what you're doing here, but you're having these layers of prompts. And, if you've ever programmed, you're familiar with this layering where you've got very general, high level stuff. Then you go down to a specific thing. Like here's the style that we're playing, the adventure that we're doing. Then you go down to an even more specific thing, which is here are the characters that are playing here. And then an even more specific thing you can layer on is here's the current state of the campaign and the current way of doing things, right? And I can tell you from 2 years of doing this manually, that's a lot of work to cut and paste stuff, plus keeping track of it, right? But if you have these little plugins in there, these MCP servers, you can imagine how, one, you don't have to do all of that, but two, going back to the idea of the agentic nature where it figures out how to use tools from the bag of tricks, that it can start to figure out doing all of that on its own, and you don't really have to coordinate it much at all. And as an example of where you can even get even crazier on that, to use object-oriented terminology, right? You can imagine that if you had an adventure, as Corby was just showing you, you could have another plugin that was all right, take this stock adventure and customize it to fit what my players are. Right now, in D&D terminology, this is I forget how they say it, but you might have an adventure that's written for first level characters, but you want to play it with 8th level characters. So you have to go to the adventure and level it up to 8th level players, because otherwise they'll just like sneeze and kill a goblin, right? And so like, and not only for that kind of like changing the numbers behind it, but you could go in and adapt what your D&D adventure is to what a player liked, what their style was, what the strengths of the characters are. And then going to like outside of the realm of D&D, you can see how you could customize and personalize all sorts of things that normally were static, right? And it's all just by like going in and decorating, whatever that's called, like modifying the things that you had there. And again, relying on the AI to figure out how to chain all this stuff together.
Wonderful. Okay, so I went ahead and registered our campaign tool with the session. So it's now in our bag of tricks, our available MCP tools. We have the ability to start a session, load a campaign, roll dice, access a loot table. Let's get this party started. Start a new session. Okay, so it's going to access my tool and set the start session tool for campaign MCP here. And let's see. So normally it is the prompting I've given it is usually enough to have it intelligently load the campaign. It did not do that. So I'm going to tell it to load the campaign here.
Oh, it figured it out, right? You just had to, it was just thinking too hard.
No, normally it does it automatically. So I tell it to start the new session and it loads the campaign.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so we'll work offline and iterate off that so it's smarter about doing that automatically. But it has now loaded up the adventure. It's set in the bustling frontier town of Fanlin, where goblins have been causing trouble lately. Before we begin, Deshaun, and I'll stop here and let Coté take over the narration. I'd love to hear about your character. What brings them to this rough and tumble settlement on the Sword Coast?
My character is actually wounded, and he's got these big, crazy thoughts about gravity, and he just wants to tell everybody.
See, that's why you need a human element in generative AI stuff, because it just does what seems like the next logical thing to a question, and what Deshaun said has no logic. but it introduces like some chaos and randomness into it, which hints the fun in imaginative playing around.
Are there any D&D elements of your character that you'd like to share? Do you want to just run with this?
Do I have what are the character types?
Just say you're a fighter. That's the easiest.
I'm a fighter. Hence the wound. Not really good.
All right. I'll let Coté take over.
Yeah. So see, this is great. It's like, this is where we're playing with a generative AI thing. Playing with a human who is creative is cool too. They'll have plenty of options in the future. But you can see it's like sufficiently good at just like doing stuff that's interesting. Now, you can always tune this. Like if you don't like this style of doing stuff, whatever. You can make it shorter, longer, and you could be like, do it in the style of this, like whatever you may like. But this is a good start here, right? Like he's set into there, and now it's kind of like asking Deshaun. Like it's almost interesting, like it's keyed in that he's into gravity. Or maybe not, and asking for something to happen next.
That is amazing. I would like to find a place to stay. Do I have any money? Ugh. Look at my pockets.
So you can decline to answer, but it is asking you a context question. How badly are you hurt, and what's troubling your mind about the nature of falling?
Yeah. That's it. Maybe it's my balance has gotten me off, but I'll make it through. I'll make it a couple more days. I'm not panicking about my wounds, but yeah, something is off, and I think it has to do with gravity.
All right, very good.
And so here, if you remember the adventure more or less, you can see that it's introducing characters, and as we'll probably see if it happens like last time we ran through this, it'll actually start to move the plot along and make things happen, which is thrilling. That's also a problem AI stuff has with doing adventures, is it sometimes just waits for you to tell it what to do. But I think they've gotten better at that.
The common room is populated with a handful of patrons, miners still dusty from their day's work, a merchant warming his hands by the fire, and what appears to be a local farmer nursing an ale in the corner. The wooden floor beneath your feet feels solid enough, though your own sense of what's up and what's down seems to be playing tricks on you. Would you like to take a seat? Though I should mention, Toblin typically expects his patrons to order something or rent a room.
I'm scanning the room for somebody that I can finagle out of some money. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, what a rogue!
I'm wounded, but yeah, I need some coin.
So here we don't have this in the bag of tricks, but when you do this in D&D, you would typically roll a perception check. And well, I guess
that's exactly what it's doing. It's saying, "Let me have you roll a perception check."
Right.
It's more Coté than Coté.
This is awesome.
That's right. So it knows to go out and use the dice, which is great, right?
Yes.
And what does it say you rolled?
It says you rolled a 6. With that low roll in your current unsteady state, the room seems to swim a bit before your eyes. So you failed the perception check.
And now another plugin that you would logically add, or MCP server, is you would have the character server, right? And Deshaun would have made a character and put it in the server, and initially it would have sucked in this character to use for things like knowing. The skill you use here is a perception check, and it would read that in from Deshaun's character sheet and see if there's any modifiers, positive or negative, to it. And that's another thing where I suspect if we had this character thing, it would just know to look that up, right? In the same way that it knew to roll.
So that's what we got to work on next. We got to work on this character sheet because I'm already having fun. And we've been playing for 2.5 minutes.
And I think the character sheet is a great thing, but I also like this experience. I wanted to just jump in and start playing. I didn't want to have to build out a full character sheet and learn the D&D rules and stuff like that. It just rolls with it. It just kind of fills things in as it goes along, which is another great experience. Just then, there's a commotion outside, shouts of alarm and the sound of breaking wood. Through the window, you glimpse several small, dark shapes darting past, carrying what looks like a crate.
No, boy. What is going on here? I'm still scanning the room. I'm not going to go check it out. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to look at the barkeep. I'm going to look, and I'm going to see what is their reaction before I make any moves. I want to see what's going on inside, because maybe that commotion is going to give me some opportunity to find some coin.
All right.
What could possibly go wrong?
Toblin nearly drops the glass. He's cleaning, his face reddening as he rushes to the window. You notice his keys jangling at his belt as he moves, Deshaun.
Yes, I'm going for it. Let me see
50 gold pieces. I'll pay 50 gold to anyone who recovers those crates.
No,
the miners grumble but don't move. Apparently too wary to help. They're as helpful as you are, Deshaun.
Yep. I'm going to do the sleight of hand check.
Toblin hasn't noticed you eyeing his keyring in his distracted state. Would you like to make a sleight of hand check to see what opportunities might present themselves?
Yes. Yes, I would.
See, and this is another
example. Over there?
Another example, of course, of the AI being smart. It's figured out that Deshaun likes to steal stuff, or whatever his character is, the gravity guy.
Yep.
And Deshaun's character.
It's even offering the chance to play into that character and do something, right? Which is pretty great that it's doing that kind of thing.
All right, you need to work on your dice rolls. You failed the check. As you try to drift closer to Toblin, you stumble against a chair. The noise draws his attention, and his hand instinctively drops to his keyring.
I was just wanting to talk to you about the 50 coins. Can I get some of that? Can I get some of that up front if I go and chase after your crate?
And advance, ha! He lets out a short, sharp laugh. Friend, I've been running this in long enough to know better than that. Though if you're truly interested in earning that gold, prove it back by bringing my med. The track should still be fresh, assuming you can walk straight enough to follow them.
All right. All right. Well, I had enough rest here. I'm going after the mead. Pink Emma summed it up. I'm wounded, but poor.
All right, Deshaun, you are not doing well. You need
no.
to make a survival check to track these bandits. You need to work on your dice rolling game here. You rolled a 3 on a d20. You had 20 results, and you rolled a 3. With that very low roll.
So an interesting, a fun thing to do with our dice rolling service, I assume it could do this kind of stuff, would be to let's call it the fun dial. And we would say, whenever you call the dice rolling service, give me some information about how much failure the players have experienced. And like you could set the fun dial to be like, if they've been doing poorly for a long time, let's maybe like juice the dice and give them a good result, right? Like, because
absolutely get a little pity time in there.
This will happen, and like I instead of blaming randomness, I blame whatever time was on the CPU clock when random stuff was done. But you do tend to get clusters of bad rolls when you do this a lot, which is interesting. You also get clusters of good rolls, but it would be nice to like space them out more. And I'm no diceologist, but it seems like that's why you would want this kind of knob. Because you could kind of, there's also like the DM discretion of just like, you can, as they say, flub rolls, right? So you would almost want to build in like, I want to play in hard mode. And so like, only give me the random stuff or even penalize it to make it worse. Or I want to play in easier fun mode and have the AI kind of track this and pass into your dice roller to be like, try to give better rolls, give higher rolls in these situations.
I agree with Pink Emma. When I was young, I would always roll the dice behind the screen as a DM so that if I needed to change things up to make it more fun, then I could do that.
There you go.
Well, you failed your tracking, but you did notice something that even your addled tracking skills can't miss, Deshaun. The sound of breaking glass and muffled giggling coming from behind Barthen's Provisions just up the street.
I've got to investigate. I have to investigate. And I'm going to do my best to be quiet.
I get it'll be. You'll have to see if it does this, but by default, I think everyone's skill check is 10, or everyone's is 0 basically, and so like. Whatever he ends up rolling, the AI can just assume that like just go straight up with the roll and see if that matches the what they call, is it the difficulty class, the DC, like the number you have to roll at or above to be successful at something.
We are giving this Dice NPC server a workout. I should be like charging a penny per call or something here. Make someone sign. You rolled a 10. That doesn't sound like a great roll to me, but we'll see. You move towards the provisions. As you round the corner, you see 3 goblins crowded around the broken crate. They are arguing, attempting to salvage unbroken bottles from the wreckage. One takes a swig and spits it out. Tastes like elf piss. The goblins haven't noticed you yet, but they're between you and the only intact bottles of mead remaining. What would you like to do, Deshaun?
I think the first question is, how do they know what elf piss tastes like? There's a whole story there. I think we should
maybe I should ask him.
Side quest.
Hey, that's how I'm going to start the fight. Hey, it looks like you do know what elf piss tastes like. Chump.
Well, I have to get going to doing some other work, but I think I'm gonna watch
I'm
the
gonna
rest
continue.
of this and see what you guys get to here. And I think maybe in the next, like, I think there's an interesting meta thing you can do with this too, is if you save this log, it's fun to go give it to the AI and ask it for suggestions, right? So you could almost say, like, we're doing this whole thing with plugins, like you could give it the transcript of the show and you could give it this
Yeah.
play log and just say, like, what other things should we have in the bag of tricks? And you can
Yeah.
you can do as little thinking as possible. And then when you open up the bag of tricks, you ask it for the code, and pretty soon, like I said, a few more weeks from now, it'll just send us a notification about what happened in the adventure, so that we
And
don't
it'll
have
be
to
like,
interrupt our lives.
Coté, the adventure is still happening. You haven't played in a while. Come hang out with us.
Yeah, that's right. And then it'll get lonely
Yeah.
and ask me to come play.
Hey.
So yeah, I'll play back this, but this is great. I think we started talking about this several weeks ago, and now thanks to the Spring team, it's very fast become an easy reality. Even I, who haven't coded since 2005, maybe I can do something here soon.
Well, I think this
which
is
would
a
be
good
great.
spot. We'll pause. We'll come back next week. We'll do some more. I also have another meeting that I need to go to. But this was fantastic. This was really. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, we'll have to put a GitHub up so I can do some pulls
Yes.
and pushes and some PRs on my dinglewops.
All right.
Or whatever.
We'll make that happen. We'll make that
Yes.
happen. Everybody, this was great, fun, and the whole time in my head, I'm saying, like, well, how does this work? Could I flip the script? Could I be the dungeon master and have 5 different LLMs play just to hear the
Exactly.
story? Like, what's going on? Let me see what they're doing. I want to learn. I want to be a dungeon master. I want to figure these things out. But also, they're coming from the development side, everything is always so like, hey, you find value from this table, you do a translation this way, here's how you say it in Spanish, and you had these hard-coded ways of doing things, and now we can get a little more flexible. We can do fuzzy. We can, the translation is another part of it. It's like, hey, I can have people come in and I can just say, hey, LLM, here's where they're at, here's what time of day it is there any greetings that I want to do? Right? Is there a holiday greeting? Instead of just saying, hello, Corby, is there a holiday greeting? Hey, congratulations, Corby, on your Philadelphia Eagles win, or whatever it is. Right? Being able to fill in the gaps and be able to be creative instead of having that hard-coded, here's the answer all the time. Every time you open up the app, it's the same thing. Every time you do a report, it's the same thing. You can actually have it pull out what's the most meaningful things. We're just getting started. We're still... every time we make these big, massive leaps forward, I realize, like, oh, we're still just scratching the surface. The realm of possibility is crazy. But this is fun. My wheels are spinning.
Well, let's go grease them.
Yes, great idea. Let's grease them. All right, until next time, everybody. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you, Sean.